Hi guys, it's Elizabeth again. I'm over here in my art loft and we're ready for the second part of our jelly plate tutorial. I will scoot this back over so it's not too much in the light. The last time we were here we went through the very basics of printing something from your jelly plate. We put the orange down first, and we did it just as a plain layer. Then we set that aside, and then we picked that up on that paper and then set that aside. In the meantime, we put the orange down again, and then we use this to make the circles. Then we picked that up, and there was some still left on our plate, so we decided we would use a cleanup print. Well, I put too much paint on it, so when I picked up the first one, it got the back layer, if you want to call it, of the paint and just a little bit of the front layer. And then we were able to pick up the rest of it with this one. Then we explored stencils, and when we put the yellow down on the plate, put the stencil down on the plate, rolled yellow on it, picked up the stencil, which meant that there was just yellow in that area, and then we picked it up with our original print that we had done first. Then we used our yellow off of our stencil and stamped it onto this piece of paper. Oops, get over there, blue. And then, or that was this one, and this one then was the rest of the print from the plate, because we picked it up fast. Okay, then we did something with some green and picked that up as well. Now, today I want to give you a few more hints about using your jelly plate. And the first thing is, you might ask me, we already went through how to clean your jelly plate. You do that with a cleanup print, but how do you clean your brayer? And you can see this one was totally coated in green at the end of the last video, and now it's just about clean. When you are painting or doing a lot of printing with your jelly plate, you're going to get layers and layers and layers of paint on your brayer. Now, if you let it go, you can just let it go forever, and eventually you'll be able to peel that off by just starting at one of the ends and peel it off. But if you don't want to wait that long and you want your brayer to be more like a normal brayer, then you will take it to your sink and you'll wash it. But you don't want to let all that paint go down the sink, because that's not ecologically responsible. So you could use some kind of container. I've found that this is a Q-tips type container, not necessarily that brand. You can get your store brand, and after you've used up all the stuff out of it, then you can soak your brayers in here. Now when you're soaking them, you might just let them sit like that, and you can see that this one's big enough that I can put all three of my brayers in at once. One of the things I like about it, when you're not using your brayers or not soaking them, then you want to make sure that you lay it so that it's on this, so that your brayer is suspended by these two little knobs. Because if you lay it down like this very often, you'll get a flat spot on your brayer and it will show in your prints. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to leave it in here very long either with it soaking. So this one is not clean yet. I cleaned at it a little bit, but it's clean enough that I'll use it again, and then when I clean it the next time, probably most of this stuff will come off. But you can see I had some platinum paint, and I had some blue paint, and I had some sparkly paint in there. And it's sometimes the brayer itself is so pretty, you hate to get rid of all that stuff, but there's, as far as I can tell, there's really no way to save it. So, to clean your brayer, you can use your thumb and kind of pull the paint off of it like that. You can use a nail brush to help get the paint off. I use Dawn dishwashing detergent to help clean the paint off. And if you do it over the top of something like this or a bucket of some sort, then the paint will go down into there, and you can, after the paint has settled at the bottom, you can pour off the water And then you can use a paper towel to clean that out and put that into the trash. That's the way that you really should dispose of your latex and acrylic type paints. I also use a chopstick, well, this isn't a chopstick, but something like this, a skewer, to go in here and clean out the metal part of your brayer, because it can get, you see, oh, I cleaned that one. I didn't clean the top part, but you can see it can get paint splatters on it. And if you get too many paint splatters, it can get built up in there and actually touch your brayer when you're trying to roll it. Okay, so our next lesson is purposefully pulling off paint. So we pull off our little plastic, put it away here, and don't let it get lost. I got some wet under there. That's why that's looking funny with that little spot that was there. Excuse me. So this is actually in one of my other videos. I show you how to make what I call an old wall technique. And that's one reason that I mutilated my brayer. See, the brayer's supposed to have a nice, I didn't get that very clean on the end, did I? See, that flakes right off. Put that in my trash down here. A nice round edge here, a nice smooth. And this brayer actually had, the edges of it were stuck out higher from the surface than the middle of it. So whenever I would roll with that brayer, then it would make these little lines in what I was rolling, and I didn't like that. I didn't want them just plain little lines. So what I did was to chop up the edge of my brayer with my X-Acto knife. I could have used a piece of sandpaper or something like that too. Excuse me. And this, you can see it's really crunchy right there. Can you see that? Really crunchy right there. Oops, there's probably where it is. Where I crunched into it. And that will give you an irregular edge, because I didn't want a totally plain edge. We're going to put some of this off-white down, just a tiny bit. And you see how this goes here? That's because it gets electrically charged to some degree. You know, like your hair stands up on end whenever you have your electricity getting something out of a dryer. Okay, so you can see there some of the texture that happened from the crunchy edge of the brayer. So if we wait until that's a little bit drier, actually this paint is doing what I call reticulation. I don't think it actually is, but I mean, I don't know if that's the word it's supposed to be. But what that means is your paint is separating. Look at that, isn't that cool? It's almost like writing. But if you want it to look like it was old paint that's come off the wall, you know, an old wall, you've seen those. That if you look at old buildings, a lot of times the old walls are just gorgeous because they have so much character in them. Okay, so we're going to roll this off over here again. Wasting paint, but we do use these sheets of paper, so it's not really wasting it. And then when you roll it off, you can see that we can pick up a little bit of the paint that was on the plate. Maybe we want some of these lines going this way. See how we've picked up some of that paint? So you can see from, well, it's kind of got a green haze to it, doesn't it? Because there's no green on that plate right now. But what we want is just a scattered haze of white is what I'm looking for. So it looks like the paint's coming off the wall. So then when I put on my next color, which in this case I'm going to use a, where's the color I want? I think I'm going to use the burnt umber. Will you quit rolling onto that? I have a, have a blanket down on the floor because my floor is cold. So I put my feet on that. And the silly chair is rolling onto the fringe of it and not wanting to let me roll around right. Annoying. Okay, so wherever you've put your paint down, which was right there, a lot of times that reactivates the paint that's under it. And if it does that, then sometimes it will leave an annoying spot whenever you're picking up your print. So I always try to kind of roll around in a circle with my brayer at that little spot, because then that kind of activates more than just that. And you can see we've got a little bit of the brown, but the brown is kind of semi-opaque, so it didn't cover all those spaces. You can see that we've got some little lines in there too. And we're going to pick up some of this again to make an interesting old wall look. Theoretically, sort of old wall. Okay, rolling off my paint. And now I'm lightly rolling on it just to get parts picked up. Because if it's too wet, it won't do that. If it gets very dry, then sometimes when you're not wanting it to pick up and look like old wall paint, it will do just that. It's very annoying when it does it and you don't want it to. It's very annoying when you want it to and it doesn't do it. Okay, so what I'm looking for is some transparency, because I'm going to fill that in with gold and it'll look gorgeous. Or that's the idea anyway. I'm going to go across this guy. He's kind of too rigidly there. Love my squeaky brayer. Sorry if you don't. Okay. So that's pretty much dry. We really should wait until it's totally dry. So if you're wondering why I use the colors I use, it's just the ones I like. I like those colors. And to determine which colors you want to use, I suggest that either you watch TV. Nature shows are great for that. Or go out in nature if you can. Or look at a magazine. And anytime you find a color combination that you find particularly pleasing, make a note of it. Like gold looks really good with brown and white. Or that's what I'm saying, because that's what I'm going to do here. Blue, turquoise blue looks good with brown and white and gold. So we could have done this with turquoise blue instead of with the gold. And we just want a nice even layer, nice even thin layer this time, so that we can pick up the paint that's on there. I'm going to take a little bit more off of that. And I'm just letting my brayer touch the thing. I'm not putting any pressure on it at all. Just going over it evenly, trying to make an even layer there. And then when I pick this up with my lovely sheet of paper, we should have a pretty print. A pretty print that looks like, sort of like old wall stuff. If you see somebody on a YouTube video doing some colors that you find particularly appealing, make note of those colors. And you don't have to have the exact colors. Now look at that, isn't that pretty? And I did have it a little too wet still. Didn't have it dry enough when I was picking it up. But it worked on this, and I've still got some good color still on the plate there. While that's drying, I'll show you some I did yesterday. This one's not very good, but this one's kind of interesting. And this one actually is kind of interesting too. It's got a lot of detailed green, some greens in there, and the blues. This white is because I didn't have the paint thick enough right there. I've got some better ones over here. Pick a couple up. Now what we still have on the plate, it looks like there's some brown, probably some white under that, and then the gold is on top of that. These are some other ones I did the other day. There's a blue and gold. That one's not that great. That one's really interesting. Move over there, Distress Spray. That's a light blue and copper. I like the metallics myself. That one's not so great. Oh, we're back to the beginning again. But that just gives you an idea of some of the possibilities of what the colors that you can use. Look at paintings like, for example, Van Gogh uses a color palette that includes things that are kind of like a poppy orange and a goldenrod and I think he has some yellows in there. But then he gets the cool colors in there, and he uses some kind of an aqua kind of thing that goes with those. Now, if you are mixing paints on your plate, which you can do, like for example, if we wanted to put some orange on one side, take that off of there. Oops, too much, always too much. And some yellow on the other side. Do the yellow first. And then we'll do the orange. Because there's more orange there. That's why we did the yellow first. But you can mix your paints together on your plate. And I saw a little booger there. See this? You should always take that off of there. And wipe it on your paper towel or wipe it on your apron or something like that. You don't want those little things there. And then we can spread this out evenly. Let's do a stencil on that. That'll be fun. The stencil we've already used. We'll just do the middle part of it. And we'll pick all that up. Sometimes I print both sides of my papers. Sometimes I just make icky finger marks on them. And the yellow was drier than the orange. But you can see you can get an ombre effect there if you put two colors on and roll them. If you put the same amount on and roll them kind of together, you can get the color combination. But you have to watch out when you're doing that. You don't want to use opposite colors on the color wheel, because if you do that, you'll get a muddy brown in the middle of that. And here we haven't got a, let's do that, put that back down. Right about there. Take up some more of that. There's a lot of orange. Yeah. Now, I don't like this print at all, so what I will do with this is later on I will print something over the top of this. And that can get interesting too. There's lots of things with that. Okay, we're not going to clean off our, well, yeah, we'll go ahead and clean off our stencil. We'll use this one to clean it off. Just taking the extra paint off the stencil itself. Yeah, didn't get much. So just set that aside. Now, if we wait until this dries, which is always a pain for me, I hate waiting for it. Just give it a little bit of extra fan here. If it's totally dry and then you use the opposite color, and what's opposite orange? Blue is. That's one reason Van Gogh's things stand out so much, is that they have the contrasting colors in a lot of his paintings. So if you have it totally dry, which is not quite, but it's close, then we want a blue, and this is a mixed one, so that's not the color the color it looks like is not the color it is. Oh, we'll use this one. It's kind of a blue-green. It says it's jade green. We'll use that. And we can do a pickup print with that. If the one color is totally dry, then when you add the opposite color, the green or the blue to go against the orange, then you won't get the mud. But if you mix them when they're both wet, then you will get mud. So you want to make sure that you don't mix them when they're wet if you don't want a brown. But maybe you do want brown. Well, another thing on my thumb again. The hardest part about a jelly print is waiting for the one to dry if you want it dry. And you can peek, and there it is. And so we have orange. We have a little bit of yellow. You can't see the yellow much because it kind of blends in with the green. And we got this kind of thing here because we didn't, we should have scrubbed right there a little bit more. Because when you put the little circle down of paint, then where you put it, and that's a different color green. I like that green better. If you don't kind of go back and forth where you've put that circle down, then it will give that a lighter look than the other, the paint that surrounds it, because it was wetter. Making it very thin here. Trying to make that smooth instead of using my little crunchies. Here's my roll-off thing from before. So you can see how I could use that in tags and junk journals or whatever and make it interesting. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry. Once that's dry, then you can do, or almost dry, you can do a subtractive process. And in this case, I've taken the eraser and I've trimmed out with my X-Acto knife two little rectangles. And on the other side, I have a rectangle. But then I've made the edge of it kind of, I don't know if you can see that, but it's kind of got a little bump, so that if you wanted to make a little stitch mark across here, I'm making it bigger than I need to. Let's see if we can see that. Can you see that? A little bit. Kind of a perforated line. Whoops! I don't want to put that down there. Okay, you can also subtract off paint from it with the eraser or with a rubber stamp of any kind. And in this case, when you've got these little perforations like this, you can use a comb to make interesting marks on your plate as well. See how you've made that kind of a comb? Can you see the little lines? Parallel lines. When it starts getting dry, like it's doing right there, then it's easy to remove the ink with your stamp. If your stamp isn't wet, let's take that, blot that over here. Helps if I put it down on the table like a sensible person. So all those spaces, whatever color I put on top of that, will show through all those spaces. Let's see if we can get this combed through here. Yeah, it's not wanting to do that. Oh, there we got some. Look at that. Makes it kind of interesting. I guess it'd be better with white under there, huh? Do you see that right there? You can actually use your skewer to write on your plate, but if you can hold on to it, but if you write on it, you have to write backwards if you want it to come out right on your plate. So if we do love, we do L-O-V-E. Which is hard to see because of all the other patterning. You also want to make sure that you don't poke it with a pointy thing. So this is kind of blunted already. So that's why I'm using it to write my love letter on there. E. Come on, E. What you have to remember is that your plate, the first thing that you put on your plate is what's going to show on the top of your print. The last thing that you put on your plate is going to be on the bottom of your print. So if you had this solid as a solid green, and then you put solid blue over the top of it, you won't see the blue unless the green's a little bit transparent. Okay, so we're going to put a, let's just use, we'll use this pinky color here. It's a mixed up white pink color. And we'll put some right here. Oh, way too much. I don't know what is wrong with me. I know what's wrong with me. I've been playing with my big jelly plate. Okay, so we're going to put this pinky white over the top of it. And we want a nice, even, thin layer. So I'm going to roll some of the excess paint off over here. And go again, take some of this off. So if you just let your brayer kind of float over the top of that. Then it will just have enough pressure that it will leave just a really thin, nice thin layer. I'm going to go one more time. And I shouldn't have because I'm getting some holes in my paint from it. Just like when we were taking it up to make the old wall look. We didn't want old wall on this. But that's the way it works. When you don't want it to happen, that's when it happens. I'm going to give it a good rub. Make sure you've got all the edges and the middle. And then when we pick it up, I'm going to do it long enough. Don't forget to subscribe and like and all the rest of that stuff. And this one's not such a good video actually because it's not pretty colors. But there's our love right in the middle that we wrote backwards on it. Here's where we did scribble this way and then this way. Thank you for watching. Bye now.